Good morning, Kevin.
Good morning. How are you?
Awesome. I'm so stoked that you're here. Thank you so much for joining me on Michelle's Conversations That Matter.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I saw your documentary, The Ripple Effect, several years ago through an organization here in my town that is a listening line, a crisis line called Caring Contact. I was invited to a viewing of your movie, and it really touched me. I was blown away by the story. You have quite the story, and the thing that resonated too was your father's story in this movie. So it's really, really powerful. So I'm really grateful that when our friend Wendell connected with you and introduced you to me, that you were gracious enough to join me on my series. So tell everyone, for folks who don't know about the Ripple Effect, tell everyone who you are, where you live, and what you do.
Absolutely. So I'm from San Francisco, California. I currently live in Atlanta. And I was born in severe poverty. I was adopted by a beautiful family. I was given a beautiful life. And at 17, it all came crumbling down and my brain broke. I had a complete mental breakdown in front of 1,200 people on stage at a play I was a part of. And I would end up having a 20-year journey until now fighting bipolar disorder. And in that journey, I would attempt to take my life in a way that is 98% fatal by jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge and surviving the fall. A sea lion would come to my aid to keep me afloat until the Coast Guard boat arrived behind me. And a doctor would perform the first and only surgery of its kind. He invented it for my situation. Only 5 of the Golden Gate Bridge jump survivors get the privilege to stand, walk, and run, and I'm one of them. They call us the most exclusive survivors club in the world. There's a book of the same name by Ben Sherwood. And I'm making a quick point there, and that is that I get to be here. And getting to be here is a privilege and a gift, no matter the pain you might be in. I always say, as I've learned now, I didn't always believe this, but that pain is inevitable. It's coming for all of us if it hasn't already in some way, shape, or form. But suffering is optional. It's a choice. All my clinicians used to tell me, Kevin, you're suffering from this and you're suffering from that. And I adopted that narrative as a young man. I took that narrative in and I internalized it. And I told myself I was a sufferer. And then I realized 2 years ago, after coming down with a second-degree burns from the bottom of my feet to the top of my head from a medication I was on that had poisoned my insides. My whole body was inflamed. I was on the tipping point of what's called Stevens-Johnson syndrome, where your insides boil outside of you. It was a very dangerous situation, and I almost died. And I realized that the pain I'd been in physically from this disease, where it felt like knives and needles were coming from my bones through my skin across my entire body, which I wanted to die every day. It was a 30 weeks of that kind of pain, 30 weeks of excruciating pain, 24 hours a day. And I even when I went to the Golden Gate Bridge all those years prior to die, I never wanted to. I believed I had to. Those are two categorically different things. But here I was all these years later dealing with this physical pain. And I made a decision. I've never suffered a day in my life. I may have been in pain since the day I was born in squalor, but I've never suffered a day in my life. And when I took that perspective, it allowed me to release myself from being the victim and allowed me to be the hero of my own story. And I think that's important.
Yeah.
It's important for people to change their perspective with whatever they're going through so they don't become the sufferers of their story. You know, it's too easy to fall into that trap and think that you can't make it out. It's not a mental illness. Mental health is not a death sentence. Everyone has to deal with it.
Yeah.
Your brain, mind, behavior, mental health, and well-being is so crucial to your overall well-being that if you're not taking care of it, if it's slipping, you're going to fall by the wayside and your life is going to be in disarray and you're going to find yourself in despair. So you can find ways to recognize that your pain is real, your pain is valid, and your pain is worthy of our time and others. But that a pain shared is a pain halved.
Mm.
Telling the truth about your pain to someone who cares about you
Yeah.
could really benefit you. Yeah.
I love your message. I think it's so important for people. I think a lot of people think that if they get diagnosed with something, that their life is different or over as they know it. So I think that could be part of the hesitancy to reach out and actually verbalize that you're struggling. So I really admire that about your message, because people need to realize that, you know, you're doing you now. You're on the other side of a dark period, and you're living proof that you can live with a mental illness. How has your life changed since the movie? And are you, did you just get like super connected to wanting to give back because your life had been spared?
You know, it really was that. We made the movie Suicide, The Ripple Effect. I co-directed and co-produced that movie with my wife and my friend Greg DeCherry. And we made that movie to give people hope. We made that movie with the idea that, and the hope and the wish and the prayer that it would save some lives. Hundreds of people have come forward to say that this film saved their life. Hundreds. And the reaction was absolutely astronomical. 20 different countries saw the movie. Over 1 million people saw the movie. Various awards. But that's not what matters. What matters was the impact it had on those who watched it.
Yeah.
That both suicide attempt survivors and suicide loss survivors could come together in one place and feel as one, where they're often divided by the very field that is supposed to connect them.
Yeah.
And as I learned about how to battle my own mental struggles, they didn't go away. They're not gone today. I'm not recovered. I'm in recovery. I take every day, one day at a time, step by step, one step at a time, and they're all baby steps. I have paranoid delusions, hallucinations, auditory and visual, manic highs, depressive lows, paranoid, panic attacks, and anxiety attacks. Heart palpitations, where I feel like my heart's about to thump out of my chest. But I pull it all together because I know that my diagnosis is not a death sentence.
Right.
I've already attempted to take my life in a way that is 98% fatal.
Right.
I will never do that again. I will never again attempt to take my life as long as I shall live, because I recognize my true value today. I have self-awareness with my disease, and that's a blessing. And when I don't have self-awareness with my disease, I end up in a psych ward. And so in order to stay self-aware, there's a certain amount of things I have to do every day to stabilize. And I want to share them with you and your audience, because these are things that can help so many people transition their lives from unrecovered, unwell, last-ditch effort, rock bottom situations to living a successful life. And I don't mean monetarily successful. I mean life skill success.
Yeah.
I mean that you have an existence that is worth living for.
Right.
And so if you go to my YouTube channel, which is on the ticker here, and you go to the playlist series, The Art of Wellness. So it's the word series, the Art of Wellness. There are 10 steps, 12 videos, 3 to 5 minutes each, easily digestible, better about how to better balance your brain, mind, behavior, mental health, and physical health and well-being. They are 10 common sense tools to better your brain health. And people take these common sense tools for granted, but when followed in a strict routine, they immensely benefit your mental health.
Right.
And they immensely benefit my mental health. And I've been using this routine that I built over time. It didn't happen overnight. It was after my third psych ward stay of 9 that I built this routine. And you might say, well, why'd you have 6 more psych ward stays if the routine was good? Well, to be fair, there were times when off the routine, went right back into a psych ward. There were times when medication stopped working, went right back into the psych ward. But the one thing that remained is that I stayed self-aware
Right.
because of this routine. And let me just tell you a few of these steps I took to stabilize mentally and to keep stable most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you, first of all, the 3 E's of the 10 steps. The 3 E's are my favorite.
Okay.
Exercise, eating nutritious foods, and education. So the education comes in to educate yourself about your mental health condition and educate others. Educate the people around you that love and care for you about what you're going through so they can be there, better service you, and be better support group for you. Educate yourself so that you can be on the cutting edge of the newest forms of treatment for your diagnosis, so that when they come out, you know how to put them into your plan and make them, if they're reputable and proven, and make them a part of your mental health plan and your regimen. And then eating healthy foods or nutritious foods that feed your gut and your gut biomes good healthy food, because that affects your brain. Your gut to brain health ratio is so important, and people don't think about this too often. But the food we eat directly impacts our aggression levels, our assertive levels, our mental health and well-being. If we're manic, it affects that. It affects all of our abilities, our brain's ability to function.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really important to think about. So the food you ingest, your gut biomes are directly connected to your brain chemistry. And if the food you ingest is poorly nutritious foods,
Yeah,
or lacking value nutrition, you're really doing great damage to your brain.
yeah,
And you're doing it over time. And so if you're eating poorly every day, your brain health is just at a stalemate.
yeah.
That's why so many people who are obese have issues with anger and rage and things like that. And that's also why so many groups in poor communities have great issues with violence and aggression. So this is really, they're really all very interconnected.
Yeah.
And people can learn more about gut to brain health from I'll give you a few examples so you have some resources. Max Lugavere wrote a book called Genius Foods. It's a tremendous book. It's a wonderful piece of work that allows you to decide and decipher what foods help you heal your brain. My cousin, Kelly LeVesque, wrote a book called Body Love. And the book there, she calls herself Be Well by Kelly on Instagram. Mm-hmm. And the book there is really about eating foods that feed the whole person, not just fill your gut so you're satiated.
Got it.
Really, really important stuff. Moving forward, I follow these 10 steps, and I have been able to stay out of a psych ward now for, well, let's see, since 2018. It's been a rocky road. As I said, 9 psych ward stays in the last 14 years, the last which being 2018. But I'm back on track now, and I'm doing well. And like you said in the pre-interview, I am thriving, and we can all thrive in spite of our mental struggles if we believe in ourselves and fight the good fight.
Kevin, what are your non-negotiables? Like, I appreciate your 3 E's, and I think they're important. And so on a personal note, like, what are your non-negotiables, for example, for you day to day to make sure that aside from the diet and the exercise, like that you have to absolutely do to keep yourself feeling good?
I think one of the most important ones on the face of the planet for all of us, and certainly for me, is sleep. If I don't get enough sleep, I'm not well. And listen, I recognize that's a lot easier for me to say and harder for a lot of people to do. Right. But you're talking to an individual that on multiple occasions battled with insomnia, and it really was a battle. It really was a fight, because when you are living with insomnia, the hardest thing to do is the next day to get that sleep that you need. It's just a cycle that continues, and it shifts your perspective. It affects your narrative. It affects who you are as a person. It affects your personality. It is really terrible not to get sleep when you need it. But there are people out there that have to work nights and sleep days, and that's difficult. There are people out there that have military jobs that have them on these shifts that are so damaging to their sleeping pattern. And you have to take the good with the bad and the ebb with the flow, and you've got to figure out, is this the right gig for me? Can I cope with doing this?
Yeah.
But I'll tell you another story regarding my sleep. There was a time prior to my last psych ward stay that I had parasomnia, sleep paralysis, insomnia. I think it was narcolepsy, which is where you fall asleep when you're talking to someone. I had 4 sleep disorders simultaneously, if not one more. And I was having a hell of a time.
Yeah.
Having hallucinations, auditory and visual, all day long. The most terrifying things you can possibly imagine seeing, I would see all throughout the day. How do you function like that? Well, you don't. You just don't. I was so lucky that my wife was there for me, is always there for me, and my support network and my rock, because she helped me get to the next day, even though it was such a struggle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so that is absolutely the biggest non-negotiable for me, is that I have to get sleep, and I have to get it every night.
Yeah, no, that's so important. And I try to remind people of that too. I mean, I reflect on my mom with her bipolar disorder, and she had the same thing, and she wouldn't sleep for days, and that would deplete her. Like, I just would look at her. It's like, we as human beings need that rest to recharge ourselves, to feel better. And I know for myself, if I don't get enough sleep, I'm like not firing all cylinders. So it makes complete sense.
Well, it's very scientific. Your brain needs the sleep to refuel its cells, and if you don't have that sleep, you don't function properly the next day. And then if that continues, and you don't get sleep day after day after day after day, you're building up this tolerance level to lack of sleep,
Mm-hmm.
which is just so negative for you. So when I finally got back to sleeping and sleeping properly, my mental health became intact, better than it had in some years. So really, when you're thinking about this routine I speak of, build it for yourself, and really check out that routine online, because it's helping people from as far as Peru, Africa, China, and Japan. And what they're saying is, by following the Art of Wellness, within 6 to 9 months of following it, they're seeing a dramatic improvement in their mental health and well-being. It's for you. It's free. Take it. It's yours. There's no reason not to.
I love it. That's so great. Talking about suicide, Kevin, I know you and I both are on a mission to really normalize the conversation, because through conversation and really identifying when you're not doing well can actually help you from reaching those dark moments. Tell us about, and the movie does a beautiful job. You did a beautiful job in the movie with this, but tell us about, what do you want people to know about the darkness immediately prior to your attempt? I mean, and what you wish for people who may experience that to prevent them from not seeing the light.
When you're in that dark place and you see nothing but pain, and all you want is that pain to end, you almost can't see anything past that. You can't see that future where you're gonna, I was 19 when I jumped. You can't see that future where you're 39, you're happily married, like I am today.
Mm-hmm.
You can't see that picture where you get to be at the birth of your niece and nephew who turn out to be your godson and goddaughter. You can't see that you had this dog named Max, who's the best dog in the whole wide world before he passed, and he made your life completely fulfilled because he was like a total human being. Mm-hmm. You can't see your dad become the best man at your wedding after having an arduous relationship with your father, reconciling and having one of the best relationships ever that a father and son could have. You can't see any of that, mm-hmm. because all you can see is death. But if you take a moment in suicidal ideation to think about what you could miss, and if you recognize that everyone is going to die, we are mortal beings. Mm-hmm. None of us are here forever. Give yourself time plus hard work for things to change. And I think that's the hard part is how do you get someone who's in that desperate pain to do the hard work?
Yeah.
But it's not impossible.
Right.
They just need a bit of encouragement, a great deal of hope, and the idea that this life is worth living for. If you put in the effort, you can change your perspective. It's just like looking at yourself as the victim. If you're constantly doing that, and you're constantly at a loss, you're looking at the negative side of things. I hate today. I hate my life. I hate me. Turn that around. Look in the mirror and reverse your self-loathing so you can survive the pain. Reverse your negative inner critical voice, be a positive one.
I love that. I think, and I think you and I both agree, I mean, just based on the work that you're doing, that there's far too much stigma that still exists. There's far too much fear and embarrassment that prevents people from even acknowledging how they're doing. What do you think we can be doing to really eradicate a stigma, to really help people start openly expressing how they're doing and then ultimately be able to get support?
I think that one of the best things we could do is have proper reporting in the media about suicide and mental health. I think that we have far too much conjecture, far too much sensationalism, and far too much speculation about, celebrities that die by suicide, things like that. I think that we need to have the conversation about mental health and suicide in the media in an educational way that is helpful and beneficial to those watching to prevent suicide. But right now, they're focused on for example, my story. They're focused on the jump, the hit, and the fall, and those things, and that's all they care about.
Yeah,
that's not what's important. What's important is how I found, live, and stay in recovery.
Yes.
That's what's going to help someone find hope and find light at the end of the tunnel and stay here.
Yes.
But we have an opportunity, and then you look at what's going on with COVID right now.
Yeah.
Yes, COVID's terrible. Yes, COVID is killing people all around the world.
Yeah.
But suicide is killing at least double the amount that COVID is in the same amount of time.
Yeah.
And yet we don't hear about that at all, not a peep on TV.
Yeah.
And the only time we hear about it is when a celebrity dies by suicide.
Right.
Which we absolutely want to give them tribute, but what we don't want to do is make them look, I'm lacking the word. I can think of the word right now, but you don't want to make it look like it's a big deal.
Yeah.
And make them feel, because all that does is make the people watching feel inadequate.
Yep.
Oh, I'm not that celebrity, so my life is not as important.
Right.
We have a problem in society where the culture has shifted to being so afraid to talk about brain health and suicide that instead of educating people about it, we're saying either don't talk about it at all or just be sensationalistic. One of the two.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many people have said to me, well, you can't talk about your experience because it's going to make people think about suicide. Well, that's just not how it works.
Yeah.
It's proven time and time again. Yep. If I talk about my attempt and I talk about my method, even because there's always talk about method and safe messaging. I talk about my method, which is the Golden Gate Bridge. People get upset about that, but there's no getting around that for me.
Right.
It's very public. It was on the news. People know what happened. And how you tell me how we're going to get a net up on the Golden Gate Bridge to stop the suicides there, unless I mention what happens there every day.
Yep.
Every 7 to 10 days, someone dies at the Golden Gate Bridge. How are we going to stop it if we don't talk about it?
Right.
And so that's really where I am today is that I'm in a better place mentally. I'm in a safe place mentally. I work tirelessly for my better brain health and well-being. My wife helps me a great deal. My family has got my back, but I'm an anomaly when you think about that. There's a lot of people out there in the world that don't have a great support network to get their back. So in order for them to help themselves, you have to push them to recognize their own true value and to have personal atonement and peace. You have to help them recognize that they have to matter to themselves, that if they don't have the outside help, or if they don't have the mom or the dad that supports them, or the brother and the sister that supports them, or the wife or husband that supports them, or the significant other of any kind, if they don't have that, they have to look within. Right. And they have to look within. They have to look in the mirror and say, I love you, you're amazing, you're the best, and I'm going to stay alive because I believe in you. And that's a hard thing to do for people that are in that much pain. Right. But it's not impossible.
Right. I want to acknowledge you and give you props for that that net that did get put up after everything to prevent people. Correct. It went. I feel like it was part of the end of the documentary, right?
It's being put up right now. The end of the documentary showed that it was being approved.
Yes.
It's being put up right now. It looks to be finished in 2023. And as of 2023, when that net is finalized, not one more human being will ever again die off the Golden Gate Bridge. And that bridge will finally become the largest and brightest beacon for suicide prevention all around the world.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing. That's a good job. That's incredible. And you're right. You had to tell the story to get people to pay attention that this is a problem.
Well, to be fair, I was, as we said earlier, I was a cog in the wheel of that movement. There was hundreds and hundreds of people, if not thousands, that worked tirelessly to make that happen. So we're all a part of a big movement, and we worked really hard for 14 years. Some people were in the fight for 30 years working to make that happen. The great Jerry Motto, a psychiatrist in the 70s who created the caring letters, he passed away recently, but he fought for the raising of the net for 30 years. Eve Meyer of San Francisco Suicide Prevention fought for the net for 30 years. And so my father and I were part of the fight for 14 years, going on 16 now, but it's been a few years. We really worked hard. And the Bridge Rail Foundation this is important for your audience. The Bridge Rail Foundation, found at bridgerail.net, they are a phenomenal organization that my father co-founded with Dave Hull and Paul Muller. And Paul Muller is now the president of that organization. And they were the impetus to seeing it really through. They really fought the hardest and got things moving. And there was a great situation that occurred years ago where the Gamboa family, Kimberly Renee and Manuel Gamboa, came forward to the Bridge Directorate, and they pulled in these huge boxes with 150,000 signatures from all around the world saying, "Put the net up now." And that was a shifting moment. You could feel it in the air at the hearing we were at when they put those boxes on the table in the boardroom. It was powerful.
Amazing. Thank you. That's amazing. Thanks for sharing that. So I look at this pandemic, Kevin, I get hope from this pandemic because I feel like for the first time, the conversation about mental well-being is now coming to the surface because so many of us during quarantine, dealing with what we're dealing with, whether it's, job loss, loved ones' lives lost to COVID, it's finally getting the light. And so it gives me hope that things are finally going to start to change and we're going to normalize mental illness and mental health. What's your take? And what do you think people can be doing? Like the average person, how does the average person be a contribution to remove this stigma?
I think we are normalizing the conversation. I think it's crucial. I think the media could be doing a better job at doing that, but they are. You're right. They have been trying. And I think the average person, it's interesting. I just saw a bit of a meme online where a family put out on their porch a big sign that says #MentalHealthMatters. And I think it said, "And so do you." And the video, of course, went viral. But it's the little things like that can really make a difference in your personal community. We think of campaign posters, right?
Mhm.
They're all over the place for these politicians that want to win their seat in whatever position they want to hold. What if we put mental health matters posters across the entire lawn fairway of a freeway or a highway? You know, what if we put, text CNQR to 741-741, the crisis text line, as far as the eye could see, and had sign after sign after sign, and that wouldn't be taken down, that wouldn't be removed, that was sanctioned. What if we had more people put those kinds of posters in their walls and in their windows for people to see, normalizing the conversation to everyone and saying, it's just basically saying, we care about you.
Yeah.
You matter to us.
Yeah.
When people feel cared for, they are less likely to die by suicide. That is a fact.
Mm-hmm.
When people feel loved and feel valued, they're more likely to ask for help than if they don't. Yeah. And even if they are loved and valued, but they don't feel loved and valued, there's a big difference there.
Yes.
They don't feel loved and valued, they feel useless and worthless, then they're more prone to suicide. And so I think that, we have to be honest. It's not all mental health and mental illness that's causing suicide. What's causing it on a deeper level is things like trauma.
Yeah.
And how people are affected by certain situations in their life. And we get conflicted, we get confused. Trauma doesn't mean that they have to be a combat veteran or a police officer that's been shot. That's not what trauma is. Trauma is whatever it is to that individual that is traumatic to that individual. That's what trauma is. Trauma can be losing a loved one to cancer. Trauma can be losing a loved one to a heart attack. Trauma can be being physically abused. There's all kinds of trauma in this world, and they affect how you internalize your own thought processes. So we are hurt and affected by every hurtful, negative, spiteful thing that's ever been said or done to us. Yeah. We backbrain that stuff, and that stays in a sticky memory in the back of our head. And then when we have a hard time, it comes forward. Yeah. And that may be a time we consider suicide, And so I can tell you that as a person who was bullied viciously in grade school, viciously, tormented because I was part Black, and the rest of the students were not, I can tell you that played a critical role in my suicide attempt all those years later, because how I internalized their words toward me, how I made it my own personal narrative, and how I used to talk to myself and how I used to self-loathe. And so reversing those negative inner critical voices and looking in the mirror and saying, Kevin, I love you, that's really what changed everything. It made me realize how valued I was and that I valued myself. And that's important. And you have to forgive yourself as well for all the things you do wrong so you can move forward.
Yeah, I love it. So the net here is it's okay to not be okay, and it's important to be self-reflective and be self-aware. I think those are very important points. So Kevin, tell us what you're up to before we wrap up. What are you up to now? What's next for you, and how do we follow you in the work that you're doing?
Well, we wrote the book. We wrote the book Cracked Not Broken a while ago. That's still going strong. And that's my biography. And then Suicide: The Ripple Effect came out a couple of years ago, and we are working on putting together and pitching a docuseries that we hope to get out to the world as soon as possible. Following my journey around the world pre-COVID, meeting with people who have been tremendously impacted by the story. One of the most powerful moments in that series is when a young man named Lachlan, he was on a bridge in Australia and he was ready to take his life. And he said, I'm going to go look on Facebook and see if anybody cares. And his girlfriend had just shared with him the trailer to our film, Suicide: The Ripple Effect. And he watched it, and he watched it again. And he decided not to take his life. He called his parents and they picked him up. And he told them what was going on with his life. And it was just such a moving story. Well, we have thousands of those stories from all around the world.
Mhm.
And we're going to explore those stories and tell them. It's going to be something. It's going to be very eye-opening and very beautiful, and one of the most powerful pieces of suicide prevention I think the world could ever see. Very excited about that. And then, as I said, we've got the YouTube channel with 486 videos and counting.
Mhm.
And we drop those every Thursday and Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, like clockwork. And we are trying to do as much work in this field as possible in many different ways and mediums so that we can reach other people. And you can reach me the best at the YouTube channel because I respond to all my messages if they're inappropriate or they're negative, I don't respond. But if you want to talk about something positive and hopeful, then please write in. And if you're having a hard time, just know we'll always reach back out with support.
Amazing. Kevin, thank you so much. Thanks for giving me some of your time today. Thanks for who you are in the world, the great work that you're doing, the lives that you're saving. I honor you for all that you've navigated yourself personally and all that you're doing to help this world heal and be better off. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Take good care, my friend.